to the channel. Listen, Cody Curry here, and this is 110 SAS Actual. Battle Rifle Royale is finally here. That's right, we've taken the biggest 4 names in battle rifles and seeing which comes out on top. We have the Kac-Lmt-Mars-H, HK-MR762, the FN SCAR, and the Knights Armament SR25. Who's gonna be the best? So the time is here. So, before you go any further, have you watched all the Battle Rifle Royale contender videos? If not, stop now, hit subscribe, peep my Instagram, and go back to my channel to watch the videos on each weapon, and then come on back here. So did you do it yet? All right, cool. So let's get to it. Battle Rifle Royale is gonna be measured on a few major components, the most important key aspects when considering the best battle rifle. So we've broken it down into a few main groups. We have reliability, recoil impulse, the trigger, accuracy, how they feel, overall feeling, weight, and MSRP. And of course, just how Gucci is it? Because impressing strangers is important, right? I mean, I guess it depends on who you ask. So, each rifle was chosen by reputation. LMT, HK, FN, and Knights Armament are undoubtedly the biggest names when it comes to mind when it comes to battle rifles. Each manufacturer has a long-standing history of battle-proven weapons. They're all tough, they're all combat ready, but which one is the best? So each rifle we selected is a 16-inch barrel within a ½ inch. You know, they don't all make exactly 16-inch barrels. HK is a 16.5, Knights is a 16, but they're all within a ½ inch. So close enough, right? Each rifle gets match and bulk ammo put through them for quantifiable data as well. Each rifle is going to be judged again on trigger feeling, recoil impulse, handling, and a few more things. So let's just dive in. So first and foremost, the major and most important key point of every rifle ever manufactured: reliability. Does this gun feed every cartridge? Does this gun eject every spent case? Does this gun go bang every time I tell it to? The gold standard of every firearm ever manufactured. So, how we tested reliability for each platform. Each one of these guns were ran extremely hard. Now, if you've seen any of the other prior videos, no firearm I have ever tested or featured hasn't been ran to the fullest capability. Rapid fire strings of 10 to mag dumps of 20, steel cased ammo, bulk M80 brass ammo, and federal gold medal match. Each rifle was subjected to a substantial amount of steel case and M80 ammo, and a minimum of 60 rounds of federal gold medal match through each rifle. Each weapon was tested in their 100% stock form, internally and mags. That means buffer and buffer spring, trigger, gas system, barrel, and all other key components, with the exceptions of some rail panels, hand stops, and a few other minor things that don't affect reliability. It was extremely important to me to keep these guns as close to stock internally as possible to get the truest measure of reliability. So let's start with the SR25. The Knights Armament SR25 handled everything that was thrown at it with a very consistent ejection of 3 to 4 o'clock. We use Knights Armament SR25 steel mags. These are the steel mag versions with the black followers. With this weapon, I had 0 issues to report, feeding nor ejection. The SR25 is a DI system, and it's important to note that the gas system is in tune very, very well, and it definitely shows with the reliability test. Moving on to the HK-MR762. Yes, the German space magic. A piston-driven system. Steel-cased, no problems to report. Federal gold medal match, no problems to report. However, with the bulk M80, we did get a few cases left in the chamber, with the case rim torn off. The extractor failed to extract and ripped the case off, the case lip off. Now keep in mind, the same M80 ammo, all from the same lot number, was used in all the other contenders in the exact same fashion. Ran hard. We experienced at least 3 failures to extract due to the ejector ripping off the rim and leaving the spent case in the chamber. This type of malfunction isn't exactly cleared either. The cartridge is fire formed to the chamber, which makes it slightly more difficult to extract it by hand. Each time, the malfunction had to be cleared with a cleaning rod. Now, If you're familiar with the horror stories of the early M16A1 failures in Vietnam, you'll know how catastrophic of a failure this can be when your life depends on that weapon. Now, it's also important to note, I only counted 3 of these types of malfunctions out of the nearly 4 figures of rounds. In my opinion, while this is a terrible malfunction, and none of the other platforms had this issue, it's an extraordinarily small number of malfunctions in relation to how many rounds these rifles were subjected to. Upon examination of the extractor, it does kind of appear to have a sharper, more pronounced edge on it. But in my opinion, it's a very subtle difference from the rest of the bolts. Could this be the culprit? I think the extractor paired with the bulk M80 ammo that isn't manufactured to the highest spec, we found our issue. Because again, with the federal gold medal match and the steel case ammo, it just wasn't an issue. So overall, in my opinion, this is more of an ammo issue than an inherent flaw of the weapon system. The magazines that we used in this test were HK's proprietary magazines, and they function flawlessly without any issues to report. So let's move on to the LMT. The Mars H is a direct impingement platform, just like the SR25. But one thing I found in testing, the weapon is rather overgassed. There can be some pros to an overgassed weapon system, but it also comes with some cons. And I feel the cons outweigh the pros. Now the pros being, it's going to run in slightly more adverse conditions. This weapon can run. However, an overgas system means more gas introduced to the bolt carrier group and the internals of the weapon. This leads to more wear and tear on the platform and other internals, a sharper felt recoil, and a gun that just gets dirtier faster. So this means you'll have to keep the weapon a little more lubed and more often than the rest. When there's a can introduced, the gas is even more prominent, to the point where my eyeballs were definitely feeling the difference. I may have shed a few tears on the range, but hey, they were happy tears, so I can't complain. But this also led to a couple malfunctions, all of which were failures to eject. Now, without a can, we had a pretty consistent 1 to 2 o'clock ejection pattern. With the can, that's where we had the issues. We had a very sporadic ejection pattern. This was a little concerning, so I reached out to an LMT rep that I found on the forums and asked him about it. LMT customer service is top-notch and responded promptly. He mentioned and confirmed that some of the LMT rifles are purposely overgassed according to commercial understanding, but they run regardless of environmental conditions. And they're right, this is a fact. But again, there can be cons to this, and it does show. The mags we used in the LMT were Steel Knights armament mags, and we also used P mags. There were 0 feeding issues to report with either mag. And lastly, we have the SCAR. 0 issues to report with the SCAR. M80, steel case ammo, federal gold medal match. It all ran excellent. We used the factory SCAR mags for the test, and we have 0 feeding issues to report. Ejection pattern was a very consistent 3 to 4 o'clock. The SCAR is a piston operated system and is tuned very well. I'm very, very happy with the SCAR's reliability. So, as far as reliability goes, each one of these weapons are going to be good, reliable platforms. Did we have a couple small malfunctions with a couple of the weapons? Sure, but that doesn't mean necessarily that they are unreliable, garbage platforms. In my opinion, all of them were going to be set at a tie. Just because we had some small malfunctions, again, doesn't mean that these rifles are junk and they don't run, Maybe it's a little overgassed, okay, but it's still gonna run in adverse conditions. Maybe it did rip the lip off of a case you're trying to extract. It's probably more closely related to being bulk M80 ammo. So, again, we're gonna put these all up as a tie. So now, we're moving on to the trigger. The soul of a rifle. A good trigger can make or break a firearm. A good trigger will help a rifle excel in rapid fire and shine in accuracy and long range shooting. We'll talk about the break, the weight, and just overall feeling of these 100% factory triggers. So let's start with the SCAR. This very well could be one of the absolute worst factory triggers I've ever felt. It's a single stage, filthy, dirty, and gritty 6-pound break with a considerable amount of creep and unpredictability. Not only does this lead to a weapon that without a lot of practice can't be fired nearly as fast as a lighter two-stage trigger, but your accuracy is definitely going to suffer considerably. If you get this firearm, the very first thing you should do is start searching for a replacement. On a grading scale, it's hard to even give this an F. I mean, is there a 0 on the grading scale? I'm not too sure what FN was thinking on this one, but it's gotta go. So let's talk about the LMT. The Mars H comes with a factory two-stage match grade trigger. The two-stage means there's a small amount of lightweight take-up before you hit the wall. In order to break the trigger, additional pressure must be applied. The Mars H has a fairly decent trigger. It's not great, but it's pretty good. I found there's a decent amount of creep and grittiness in the second stage final break. This isn't nearly as important when firing rapidly. However, accuracy can potentially suffer from this. While the factory trigger is definitely a serviceable one, you could benefit from an upgrade. I would like to note, however, that it is a nice feature that the gun does come with a two-stage match trigger, unlike the Scar. So, let's move on to the SR25. The Knight's Armament SR25 features a match grade two-stage trigger as well. The first stage slack is slightly less than the LMT and has a slightly lighter break as well. One thing I did find, however, is that it's a rather gritty pull, meaning it's not a very fluid one, not a one fluid, smooth motion. These are itty bitty tiny little points in resistance that vary throughout the entire break in the first and second break of the stage. In my opinion, this platform would absolutely benefit from an upgrade. I feel the factory Knight's trigger suffers from a lack of sophistication. It's just not the best. Which brings us to the HK MR762. By far the best factory trigger of all of the contenders. The first break is smooth and short. That's your treat for while the final break has a very crisp and clean candy cane-like snap. It's a phenomenal piece, and I see very little to honestly no reason to consider swapping it at all. Of all the triggers, there is a noticeable difference in break that most likely even a novice shooter could feel. So, comparing all of the triggers, let's start at the bottom. At the bottom, we've definitely got the Scar. Needs a ton of work, single stage, mil-spec, gritty trigger. At number 3, we have the Knight's Armament SR25. A light break, small amount of take-up, however, there's a lot of grit in it. It's not the best feeling, it's not a super predictable break. Number 2, we have the LMT 2-stage. It's a good trigger, not the best. It could use a little work, but that's okay. It's a good serviceable trigger. Number 1, HK, absolutely the best. Consistent, clean break, little slack, no creep, excellent trigger. So let's talk about the motion in the ocean. Recoil, the impulse felt by that freedom seed going kablam. Now, in this video, there are 2 operating systems amongst the weapons, piston and DI. So let's start with the piston weapons. The Scar-17 is an interesting feeling. None of the other platforms have as much mass reciprocating as the Scar, and it shows. The best way to describe the impulse of the Scar-17 is as if there is a 10-pound rubber mallet hidden in the adjustable cheek piece, and every time the gun goes bang, it swings, thump, and falls with a hollow and dead, just echoing thump. Just one solid thump followed by a resonating echo of all the internals vibrating the monolithic upper receiver to the point where it makes the gun feel cheap and it's kind of just lacking in sophistication. This is because the platform doesn't utilize a traditional buffer and buffer spring setup. Everything is internal in the receiver, and I just can't get that sound out of my head. Bong, bong. But I want to say it is important that it did go bong, bong every time. So, the other piston gun, the HK. The MR762 is a piston gun just like the Scar. However, it utilizes a traditional buffer and buffer spring setup. I believe this adds a significant layer of sophistication to the felt recoil. When I'm shooting this weapon, notice how my head bobs back and forth. None of the other platforms could replicate the felt recoil of the HK. The transfer of energy is directly into the shoulder, while a very small difference from the DI, I didn't feel the muzzle wanting to rise nearly as hard. It's an extremely pleasant weapon to shoot with a very unique recoil impulse with each shot. You can hear the bolt carrier moving back and forth. You can hear each internal working. This is unlike any other recoil impulse in the group. I like it. It's very sophisticated and it's very pleasant. Well done, HK. So let's talk about the DI guns. The LMT Mars H. As mentioned before, the gun is a touch overgassed, and you can definitely feel that when shooting it. The Mars H comes with an H3 buffer, and this is one of the heavier buffers that you can get. This is going to help slow down the mass of the bolt carrier group, but it's still apparent that it's slightly overgassed. The recoil felt is sharp. You can feel the buffer being pushed back a little bit more aggressively and slamming into the back of the butt. While it's definitely manageable, it's considerably sharper than the SR25, and it's a DI system. So down the road, being a DI system, I can see this leading to a little bit more wear and tear overall on your components. It's still a very fun and very nice gun to shoot. There's just that little extra nudge of chunk crashing into the back of the buffer tube into your shoulder. Which leaves us with the SR25. This rifle is buttery smooth. Each time the gun goes bang, you can feel each and every component doing its job. You can really feel the shuffle of the bolt carrier group pushing back the buffer back into the tube. It's gassed very well, which helps keep recoil extremely manageable and also pleasant. Keeping rounds on target in long strings of fire becomes much less of a chore and closer to an effortless with this system. The Knight's Armament SR25 is much more pleasant to shoot than the Scar and the LMT. So, comparing overall recoil, we're gonna put the Scar at the bottom of the list. The Scar's recoil impulse with the echoing zoom is just not super pleasant and it doesn't feel nice. The LMT, it's a very sharp recoil back into the shoulder. It recoils much harder than any of the other weapons. The HK, we're gonna go ahead and put that number 1. It's a very pleasant recoil. It's very nice to have it just pushed straight back into your shoulder. The SR25 is almost exactly the same. It's hard to put it at number 2, but we're gonna have to just because the DI does give you a little bit more energy transfer throughout the whole weapon and a little bit more muzzle rise. Now let's talk about how each platform handles a can and its characteristics while running one. To kick this off, let's start with the HK and Scar. Neither of these two weapons will have a warranty if you attach a can and run it. That's right, FN says, flat out, no thanks. Your ears must bleed. You're on your own. An HK space magic scientists use the Pythagorean theorem or something and have come up with the same conclusion. A can equals no warranty. Now, I did find something online about the OSS cans might be acceptable, but I couldn't confirm that entirely, so either way, I can't say. Both are ridiculous. It's 2022 going into 2023. This is an absurd policy, and the end user suffers from this. You mean to tell me that these super robust, well-made machines and not so friendly to the wallet rifles are going to be ruined by a can? Rather disappointing. Do better, FN and HK. So let's talk about something that can be ran without losing the warranty, the LMT. If I had one word to describe the experience of this weapon with a can, it would be unpleasant. The additional gas in the receiver gets an extremely dirty at an alarming rate, to the point of having to add lube every 200-250 rounds. The excess gas either burns off or displaces most of the lube, and it leaves the bolt carrier group sticky and not so smooth. It's not necessarily because of the can, it's more of just the oversized gas port. So that leaves us with our final and only second of the 4 that can be ran with a can, the SR25. Knight's Armor really got this right, I feel. The end user with a can was heavily considered when they designed this. Gassing is consistent and relatively clean. It ran smoothly and not nearly as aggressive in recoil as I would have imagined, especially coming from the LMT. The system is executed very well and it shows. So, to sum it up with cans, we're going to go ahead and put the SR25 on the top, the LMT at number 2, DNF from HK and FN. So let's talk about a very important factor that went into these tests: accuracy. 60 rounds of federal gold medal match 175 grain Sierra Match King ammo was fired through each rifle in 10-shot groups. So we have 6 10-shot groups for each rifle. Each rifle also had 60 rounds of 149 grain M80 brass ammo fired in 20 round groups. The M80 and federal gold medal match serve a very different purpose, M80 being a cheaper training general purpose cartridge, while the federal gold medal match being a target and precision round for when accuracy means the most. I felt since people use a little bit of both, it's very important to test both cartridges and gather quantifiable data to measure the performance of the 4 contenders. Now, rifles were shot from the prone position using a bipod and rear bag. All 175 grain federal gold medal match was taken from the same lot number to limit outside variables, as well as the 149 grain M80. Each lot was chronographed and measured for an acceptable standard deviation. The 175s chronoed around 2,415 feet per second with an average standard deviation of 9. The average muzzle velocity of the M80 was around 2660 with an average standard deviation of 22. For factory ammo, I feel that this is an acceptable measure for testing, especially for the M80 because it's just not terribly consistent. Each battle rifle was specifically selected with a 16-inch barrel within a ½ inch, as each manufacturer does not manufacture the exact 16 inches. Some 16.5, some 16. Now, as a general rule of thumb, 1 MOA or less groups of match grade ammo from a large frame battle rifle is a gold standard. 0.75 and less would be very ideal. However, most chrome-lined rifles aren't quite capable of this. In the following clips, you'll see one group of ammo from each rifle. I'd show them all to you, but this might be a 5-hour video, so we condensed it down to 1 for your viewing pleasure. So, I took as many efforts as I possibly could to keep this test as balanced as possible. The only variable being left is myself as a shooter. Now, guys, am I the greatest sniper guy? Absolutely not. Am I confident that I am an above average shooter that can equally represent each rifle and display the true precision of each platform? Yeah, absolutely. So let's go ahead and jump into it. The Lewis Machine and Tool, Mars H. So let's take a look at these groups. Starting with the M80. M80 ammo is not exactly known for its accuracy. What's most important for an ammunition such as M80, does it go bang every time I tell it to? Precision and accuracy is not high up on that list, and it shows. The LMT produced a 4.057 MOA 20-shot group at 100 yards in the clip. Average 20-shot groups were 3.92 MOA. While I would like a tighter group, you can't quite ask for much more from M80. So let's move over to the 175s. We have 6 10-shot groups total. Average of 1.31 MOA. In the video, you see a 1.352 MOA group. The FN Scar-17. In the clip, you see a 2.94 MOA 20-shot group with M80, with an average of 3.07. .04 group with the Sierra Match Kings with an average group of 1.11 MOA. So let's move over to the SR25. In the clip, you see a 4.164 MOA group with the M80, with an average group of 4.09 MOA with the Sierra. With the Sierra Match Kings, you see a .846 with an average of .81. Moving over to the M80 and the HK. You see a group of 4.79 with an average of 4.26 using the M80. Using the gold medal match, you see a .597 MOA, giving an average group of .55 MOA. So each one of these groups were fired at 100 yards. Let's talk about the winner, HK. It's a clear and concise winner. With 60 rounds fired in 10-shot groups, the average group size was .55 MOA. That's an extremely impressive feat from a large frame AR in 7.62. A large frame AR 7.62 pulling half-minute groups with boring regularity is pretty phenomenal. This isn't a custom-built gun. It's a factory rifle. So well done, HK. Second in the 175s was the Knight's Armament at a very consistent .81 MOA. I'd like to note that the factory test fire proof shows .86 MOA. Now, in third place was the FN Scar at an average group of 1.11 MOA. And lastly, the LMT, 1.31 MOA with all 175 grain. So in the final key points we're going to lump together here, MSRP, how they handle, what they weigh, and just how Gucci they are. And as a bonus, how many cool guy points you're going to get when you're flexing to strangers on the interwebs, because that's important, right? No, it's not that important. So, starting with the LMT, this guy here weighs 9.5 pounds stripped, Overall, this is a very nice weapon. LMT's biggest proponent being the barrel swap. In less than a minute in a Torx bit, you can have a 20-inch 6.5 Creedmoor pipe in it or a 13.7 7.62 pipe. This makes it a very versatile weapon system. Now, it comes with a factory 2-stage trigger, SOP-mod stock, and of course their fully ambidextrous lower receiver. I'd like to note that LMT has the only fully ambidextrous lower, meaning it has the bolt catch and bolt release on both sides, and it can be operated with just an index finger on the right side. This is a major plus. More manufacturers need to do this. It feels very good in the hands. However, it's just a little front heavy. It points well and carries very nice. The SOP-mod stock is a very nice touch. It's an excellent addition. The major thing I didn't like about this weapon was that it was just overgassed. LMT commands 3,500 MSRP for this. As far as I'm concerned, this is a Gucci weapon system, and it is going to serve you well. The SR25. The Knight's armament weighs in at 8.4 pounds. For a battle rifle, this is very light, so you can imagine how much nicer this is to carry. The rifle points and swings very naturally. The URX-4 rail is the slimmest profile of all of the contestants. It feels very nice in your hands. When I hold this gun, I don't immediately feel like I'm holding a large frame AR in 7.62. It feels much more consistent with an AR-15, and that's a major plus. You've got ambidextrous bolt release, safety, and mag release, however, no bolt catch on the right side. Now this piece commands an MSRP of 5,800. What I really liked about this rifle is how it felt like an extension of my own arm. Everything about it feels natural with an extremely pleasant recoil. But what I don't like is the factory trigger. It could use some serious work, as well as a lack of bolt catch on the right side. I think for the MSRP the rifle commands, it should be flawless and shouldn't need anything. Now, is this a nice weapon? Absolutely. Is this a Gucci weapon? Maybe the Gucciest. Is it worth the beans? I guess we'll see. The Scar-17. Ah yes, the UGG boot. Weighing in at 8-pound strip, this is the lightest offering of the four, so it's very nice to carry. However, it just doesn't feel the nicest in your hands. It has an ultra blocky front end and a reciprocating charging handle that's also in a totally different location than regular AR, which means a learning curve to master this weapon. That also includes the proprietary internals that don't have as much in common with the other three platforms. The recoil is very stiff and unpleasant. It's hard on optics, it's hard on lasers, and the trigger was simply awful. Now, this gun was an extremely reliable setup and shows decent accuracy. The NRCH Scar-17 has an MSRP of just under 4,000 beans. Is this a Gucci weapon system? Well, I suppose it depends on who you ask. You either love it or you hate it, with very few exceptions in between. Finally, the HK, Space Magic. Some of the most impressive groups I've seen from a factory semi-auto rifle. It's very impressive, but she's also beefy. The heaviest of all the offerings at 9.84 pounds. The rail is a little on the thick side in order to clear the piston. It's large and it sacrifices some comfort. The buttstock is atrocious. It doesn't need to be as big and it's simply ugly. It also has these ridiculous sling loops on both sides of the butt. It also has one underneath. When you go to point the rifle, the factory sling loops come in contact with my contacts and bust my cheek. It's just a terrible design, and I don't need that many sling loops. It does have a proprietary buffer system on it, so that means you can't just slap any stock on it. The mags are made of polymer, so they're ultra light, and they seem to be very durable. Zero feeding issues. This one is gonna run 4,200 beans. So is it Gucci? Yeah, I'd say so. So let's get to it. The moment you've been waiting for, a whole month in the making, Battle Rifle Royale. The best of the best in large frame 7.62 coming out next week. No, I'm just kidding. So let's get to this, okay? So coming in at number 4, a rifle that's proprietary from trigger, mags, bolt carrier, and barrel. A hollow and echoing thunderous recoil, the Scar-17. Simply put, this gun just isn't the best. It handles awkwardly. Now, while subjective, it's pretty ugly too. Okay accuracy, but a terrible trigger. And a whole new platform you need to learn in order to maintain, repair, and master. It beats optics to death, which isn't necessarily a problem with a quality mountain optic, but it's also hard on lasers. This platform simply doesn't excel at anything, with boutique looks and mediocre performance. it comes in number 4. Coming in at number 3, the LMT-Mars-H. So first, this weapon is a little heavy, weighing almost as much as HK's piston system, being a DI. So that affects the overall feeling and handling of the weapon. Now my biggest gripe is the rifle being overgassed. It has a sharper recoil because of that, and with a can on it, you're gonna be doing a little bit of crying. Accuracy was the worst of the 4 as well. I don't feel confident taking this weapon to a match. However, do I feel confident in this as being a general purpose battle rifle? Absolutely. It's gonna run in some of the harshest conditions. It has a great trigger for a factory trigger and an ambidextrous bolt catch. And the quick change barrel system, it's a very durable and very versatile rifle system. It's coming in at 3. Now, down to the final 2 rifles. Both of these rifles were extremely close in the competition. Both of these rifles produce excellent accuracy. Both were extremely reliable. Both are just overall fantastic weapon systems. However, when it comes down to the end, and I have to pick just one, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna grab the Knight's Armament SR25. Now these 2 rifles you really can't go wrong with. However, the Knight's Armament just does it better. So let's talk about the HK. By far the best factory trigger, and by far the best accuracy, and the best mags. However, the mag's proprietary, and that trigger is proprietary. The barrel is not chrome lined either, and that's where it really gets its edge in accuracy, but at a cost. The cost is the barrel life. HK makes a fantastic barrel, but there's no way of getting around the durability and longevity of life as you would with a chrome lined barrel. It's also very heavy, 9.84 pounds, and it has a very questionable warranty. It is a very pleasant shooter though. I was very surprised by this, pleasantly surprised. The recoil, the accuracy, and overall performance of the HK is fantastic, but it just didn't have the edge over the SR25. The fit and finish of the SR25 was unparalleled. The rifle points and swings just as if it was an extension of my own arm. It just feels nice. The carbon cutter bolt carrier is an awesome touch for reliability. The URX4 rail, it feels excellent in your hands because it isn't covering a giant gas or piston system. Accuracy was not that far behind the HK, and for a chrome-lined barrel, 0.8 MOA is a fantastic group. The Knight's gas system is perfectly tuned for with and without a can, which makes the gun run cleaner, longer, and more reliably. Recoil impulse is very smooth. It's not aggressive, and staying on target is much easier. If you were to put a brake on this weapon like the MAMS, it might feel like a 5.56. Truly, the only downfall to this weapon is the factory trigger and MSRP. But for what you get, it is indeed the greatest battle rifle of all time. So, gentlemen, that's a wrap. Thank you for subscribing and thank you for the views. Comment section on this one, I'm sure, will be a heated place to be. And I'm looking forward to it. So again, thank you.